something that he can charge 250 grand a year for, a tool that I built with software that costs $20 a month. By the time I left his house for the Super Bowl, I was fiddling with it for like an hour and a half.
I just built a tool that made me 7 figures in an hour and a half. Bye.
Everything I learned while trapped in a small office with a West Texas oil billionaire. He said to me, Chris, what if I paid you X amount of dollars a year to work here? Like completely took me off guard.
300,000 a year? 700,000 a year? Stop me, Chris.
Sure
$1 million a year, Chris? One thing on Operator I wanted to ask you. You had a video. I haven't watched the video, but it was like operators pushing operators. So I had asked you about this first, and I was like, can you have an operator operating an operator? And at first you're like, no, that's like, we can't do that. But then I saw you had a video that was like, no, you can do that. So can you do it?
Mm-hmm. So
oh, my friend, you are so dirty.
I haven't asked operator to operate operator, but I have asked operator to log into my ChatGPT account and use ChatGPT. It worked. Okay. But this,
dude, I'm going to give you my login to ChatGPT, and I want you to see if you can use operator to use my operator. Oh, that's going to be so cool.
I'll try it on my own account first.
Yeah.
Assuming I don't think it will work, but dude, that's a perfect lead in. So one thing that I'm going to do here soon is there's a bunch of, AI enabled app builders, Cursor, Replit, Bolt. There's a bunch of them. I can't even remember them all. This is what I'm going to do. I know I can have 6 operator tabs open at once. So I'm going to take 6 cursors and replits of the world and take one idea. Like, I want you to make me a calorie counter app, a web app that counts calories where I can upload a picture of food and it will tell me how many calories. That's a thing. I know AI can do this. There's a bunch of apps that do that. Okay. I'm going to tell it to give the same prompt to all 6 at the same time, run concurrently. And I'm going to tell it to work through all the bugs and see which one can build this app for me without any intervention from me whatsoever. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. The only thing I'm like thinking of is right now with operator, it's asynchronous. It's like a human, right? Like they've got to go individually one by one. So are you saying it would go to Replit, tell Replit, do XYZ things. And then while Replit's running in the background, it would go to the next tab and say, no. I'm what they call an idiot. Can you explain it to me?
Yes, I'm saying I've already tested this and you can have 6 operators running in 6 different tabs at the same time. So I'm going to take one prompt to operator and it's going to say, go to Cursor and here's the prompt, build this app. And then I'll just paste that same prompt and swap out Cursor with Bolt, with Replit, with all the others and have it just go all 6 at once.
And then
does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then see which one does the best, which one needs the least amount of intervention to build that app.
Oh, interesting.
Then I learned multiple things. Then I learned which of those 6 platforms I like the best. And I learned which of those 6 platforms works the nicest with operator. If you haven't used a Replit, you're babysitting it the whole time. You don't just say build an app and it builds an app. It breaks and it breaks and then it fixes something and then it goes back and breaks it again. But you'll get there. You will get there. But how well does operator massage it?
Dude, I know we're getting ahead of ourselves here. How cool would it be though? It's like you do that. You build the 6. They're all open in different tabs. It produces them. And then you have 6 more tabs, or it's the same 6 tabs. Cool. Now you have the app. It's the same prompt. I want you to execute these tasks on this app and tell me about your user experience, or give me how long it took to do XYZ things. So then you're getting qualitative analysis as well from operator to tell you which one of these apps performs better with speed, with quality, responsiveness, UI, whatever you want to test it on. And then you'll have a data set that you can look at and compare. That's not just you going and using it and saying which one do I like the best, but operator giving you actual data to tell you which one's the best. That would be super interesting.
That's pretty cool.
It's meta, bro. Am I on ayahuasca right now? Oh my gosh, dude. It's freaking meta. So I had an idea this week. I wrote it down to myself and I want to just tell it to you to get your opinion on it. I've been thinking a lot about this stuff. We both have. And in particular, it's like, how do I use agents? How do I prepare for agents? Some people will prepare, some people won't prepare. And I wrote this post. I haven't posted it yet, but I wrote this down. And I want to just read it to you. Hopefully it's not too boring, and then get your opinion. Ready?
Okay.
So right now people are using AI to essentially make better decisions. They're using it as a teacher, general counsel, a sounding board, a mentor. It's effectively a better version of Google.
Mm-hmm.
But soon it's going to change. It's going to change from being a tool to an extension of you, an employee, a representative, an agent making decisions on your behalf, right? We know that. So anyways, I've been thinking a lot about how you get ready for it. And I think implementing an agent is going to look a lot like onboarding an employee. You're going to need SOPs. And so an SOP, standard operating procedure. How does this work, right? What do you do? What is the function? What is the process, et cetera?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to need an orientation process. You're going to need onboarding, and you're going to need continuing oversight. So like in my mind, the best way to prepare for these agents is to create the onboarding as if it was a human employee. Like, don't think of it as, oh, I got an agent now, like just do your thing. Blah, blah, blah. Like,
that's how they're going to be trained. They're going to be trained on like SOPs from the last 10, 20 years, right?
yeah,
That's the language it speaks.
exactly. And if you have employees now, or you have processes now, document them, because that's how you're going to get the agent up to speed. Like, think of it as a human employee that's going to be taking a function. It's not just going to know, like, yes, it's very smart, but you could take the smartest person in the world, plop them into a healthcare company in the billing department and be like, all right, bill for me now. They're not going to know what to do. They don't know what system to go to, what the EMR is, how to log in, who the provider is, what they pay, what they bill, how to apply it. Like, they don't know. They have to be trained on that stuff. So I think this framework for me was a light bulb moment. Treat these processes as SOPs, document them, and then you're going to treat an agent just the same way you would treat a new employee. You're going to have to train them. So have these things ready. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. Absolute 100% agree.
It makes sense,
Hard
right?
agree. Give me 14 of them right now.
Well, and what's fun is like you and I have been doing that, right? Like we've been creating our own custom GPTs. We have been creating our own SOPs. Like we're getting to the point now where it's like, oh, we understand it's not a set it and forget it type of thing. We have to train the system, the LLM on what it's supposed to do. So like, I think it just makes natural sense to us now, but for most people, it's not. And I think they need to reframe, oh, this isn't just a computer that just figures it out. It's a new employee, train the employee. And like you said, when we're using Operator right now, it's like, I got to double check it. You got to try to break it. Did it actually do what you said it was going to do? Like, you got to do oversight. Like, you've got to see how it's performing. It's not just, oh, cool, it's going to sit there and be perfect forever. Like, you're going to have to still oversee it in some capacity.
Yeah. Dude, I've got another use case that I meant to talk about for Replit, something that I did the other day. You ready?
Okay. Yeah.
So we have a mutual friend. I'm not going to name him to protect his identity. So we went over there to watch the Super Bowl. So we're sitting, and he says, hey, I want you to show me something on Replit. Bring your MacBook. So I bring my MacBook. We're sitting down and watching the Super Bowl. Not really a good game anyway, right? What?
It's like the king inviting the court jester, like, entertain me. Show me something cool.
That was it.
So funny.
So he has a professional service business and he helps companies that are acquiring other companies. Okay. He had 4.4 gigabytes of financial data from one of his customers, mostly spreadsheets, 1.4 million rows of spreadsheet data, financial data. Okay. And it was in Tableau.
Gosh.
It's a lot. Part of it was in Tableau. It's in Excel. It's all over the place. And he wants to ask questions to this data. So we talked about GPT for Sheets on previous episodes where you can plug a formula into a sheet, drag it down. That's cool. But what do you do with 4.4 gigabytes of spreadsheets, all for one company, all financial data, a company with multiple subsidiaries, lots of stuff going on? How can you just say, like, which of my subsidiaries had the highest profit margin in July 2022? How can you find that with one prompt, right?
Well, next month, it'll be a year since I started this podcast. I've had over 100 interviews. It's been a ton of fun, but I promised my wife at some point I would decide whether or not this was going to be a business or we would just continue to pay for it out of our pocket. And I'm exploring monetization, to be honest with you. There's not a ton of costs, but I do want to figure out a way to cover the editing and the packaging and the promotion costs of putting this podcast together. So I am looking for sponsors. I don't know what that looks like. If you've enjoyed this podcast and you've ever found some value and you want to sponsor.
So I said, he wanted me to build that. And he says, Chris, if you can build this company is about to go to market. I think they're going to sell for 14 times EBITDA. I think that if they have this tool, they are AI enabled, and they'll be able to sell for 14 and a half times EBITDA, which represents 7 figures of additional value created, which means I can charge them for this tool $250,000 a year. Okay.
Oh gosh.
So I'm like, hey, you shouldn't have told me this, because that means I'm going to charge you about $200,000 a year for this.
The second he said, Chris, if you can build me this, you shut off and you just started building. By the time he was done with that sentence, because there were so many qualifiers, you're like, oh, this thing? Just turned around the MacBook. Oh, this?
Basically, yes. So I go to Replit and I type in I'm like, this is what I want. I got 4.4 gigabytes. So it gives me an interface. Okay. With like an upload button for spreadsheets. And I'm like, okay, but these spreadsheets are in Box, which is like Dropbox, right? They're on the cloud. It was this fast. I said, can you put I just want to put in a Box link. Whoop, boom. It added another field for just uploading a Box link. Interesting. Okay. So then I just start testing it. Doesn't work. It keeps breaking. It's not searching. I upload the data. It recognizes the data. It shows me load all the rows, but then it's only pulling from a sample size of the rows. So it's not answering my question. So then I take a random spreadsheet from my computer that has 14,000 rows. I upload that and I say, what's on row 1032? It doesn't give it to me, but Replit tells me it's only looking at the first 14 rows. So then I have Replit fix it so it searches all the rows. And then I ask it the same prompt and it works. It gives me the email address that's in that exact cell. So then I say, what percentage of the cells in column G are this value? And it breaks. It doesn't work. And then it works. It tells me.
Because you iterated to it.
Yeah, I just kept getting there. And I'm not doing any coding. This is just English language, basic reasoning. Okay. And then I go to the spreadsheet and I start a pivot table, 0.13%. It's exactly right. So then by the time I left his house for the Super Bowl, I was fiddling with it for like an hour and a half. It was uploading all 4.4 gigabytes of data and answering questions about this spreadsheet. Something that adds 7 figures of value to his customer, something that he can charge $250,000 a year for, a tool that I built with software that costs $20 a month.
You don't even know who won the game.
I don't.
Because you know why, Chris? You know why?
The Green Bay
you won
Packers?
the game of life, bro. Oh, I'm sorry. This is literally the Nick Huber tweet, except
full
for real.
Huber.
Oh,
full Huber.
Oh, I'm sorry. You guys are watching the game. I just built a tool that made me 7 figures in an hour and a half. Bye.
I actually was.
I'm out of here.
Funny because I actually was doing those things, but I was also watching the game. You could do both. You can have both.
That's
Isn't that
right.
crazy?
I haven't messed with Replit. I'm retarded. Is it a plugin? Like, are you doing it separate? Like, where are you actually doing these things? Oh my gosh, I knew that you were going to put the hands to the face. I'm like, even though I knew it was coming.
Do this brother a favor and edit this out so he can just go to replit.com and look and have his own question answered in 0.4 seconds. It's like a ChatGPT interface. You do it all within Replit.
Oh, you do it within. Okay, cool. I'm up to speed.
Yeah. But then
Muhammad, do this brother a favor.
But if it needs to use OpenAI's API, it will ask you for your API credentials and then it will remember them forever.
First of all, that's freaking amazing. Is he paying you?
It's funny because his wife was like, he was telling his wife, and she's like, oh, you're paying him, right? You're paying him. What are you paying him? It was good.
Very, very quick comment here. Isn't it crazy? Because I am this type of person. Isn't it crazy that the second I say, oh, yeah, and if it needs your API key, you can just give it your API key. That's going to turn 90% of people who would have done this off. Like, oh, API, okay, that's too complicated. I'm not a coder, right? Like,
we're not either.
And I've overcome that, but there's, a million other things that kind of get in the way. But the stuff is easy and it's solvable. But just that little thing weeds out 90% of people that would have otherwise used this. So
I know. All right, so I want to tell a story about a billionaire, and I don't want to feel like that type of guy that talks about his billionaire friends. I just want to preface this with, I don't know billionaires. I don't know them. I don't have rich friends. Okay. I don't.
Apparently you do.
I've talked to 2 billionaires in my entire life. One that I'm about to tell a story about, I'm going to keep him anonymous because he wanted to be kept anonymous. I'm going to change some of the details to protect his identity. But it made me think of this legendary Sam Parr tweet from February 19th, 2021. Okay.
Okay.
I just pulled it up. February in Texas, 2021, there was an apocalyptic snowstorm that knocked out the power and locked everyone inside. So he got reamed for this tweet, but he knew what he was doing. It says, I was just trapped in a snowstorm in a 2-bedroom apartment, 72 hours with one of the most powerful venture capitalists in the world. How's that for a hook? He said, this person, Andrew Chen, is a partner at Andreessen Horowitz. I asked him how to get rich through angel investing. Here's what he told me. So that became a meme, right? Like people would meme that and say, I was trapped in an apartment with, and it was hilarious, right? So I'm just thinking of that tweet as I tell this story. So here's my hook. Are you ready for it?
Permission to make fun of you, permission to not make fun of you.
Enough to be funny, but not enough to hurt my feelings. You know where that balance is, right? I'm easily offended, right? I'm not saying anything you don't already know, right?
All right, go ahead, hook.
If you offend me too much, I'll shut down emotionally and we'll edit this out and we'll never talk again.
I love this.
So here's the hook. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Everything I learned while being trapped in a stodgy office building with a West Texas oil billionaire. Okay.
Can you say it again? You stuttered in the middle there. It's not going to be good enough. We got to say it again.
Dang it. You're right.
Yeah, I know.
Here's everything I learned while trapped in a small office with a West Texas oil billionaire.
It's perfect. It's perfect.
On a January Wednesday afternoon for 7 hours.
Oh my gosh. It's so good. All right.
You ready? Okay. So
yeah.
This guy saw me on Twitter and he wanted to talk to me about social media and AI. So I drove to his office. It was a long drive. I spent 7 hours with him and 2 of his employees. And honestly, Nick, it blew my mind. It blew my mind a little bit.
It blew your mind.
Yes, it did.
Okay.
Some of the things I witnessed were stereotypical and you probably heard about on other business podcasts. Some of it really surprised me. So here, what was my nickname on our mission? What'd you call me?
Kerner the learner, Kerner the discerner,
Kerner the observer as well.
Kerner the observer. Yes.
That's right. That's right. So here's what I observed. First of all, his monitor was like a 48-inch TV right in front of his face.
Really?
Okay. Yeah, it was big. It was
okay,
big.
so we know he's 74. Okay, keep going.
We're going to whittle this down. Okay. He shared an office with one of his key employees who is a buyer. His title is buyer. He doesn't have a title. Most of his employees don't have LinkedIn profiles. They're not like out and about. They just work for this company. They're very loyal. They have great culture, but they don't like no one has a title at this company. Okay.
So he shares a room. He shares an office with this person.
Yeah. And his title is technically buyer, like a purchaser.
Interesting.
But it's like his key right-hand man.
Okay. So he did.
Okay.
But the billionaire doesn't have his own office. It's like he doesn't have the corner office. It's like massive.
It's a nice corner office.
Sure.
It's not huge, no putting green, very modest, no fancy furniture.
But it's shared. The point is it's shared.
It's shared. They're back to back. They're literally back to back.
To quote Twitter, there's a lesson there.
To quote Elon, let that sink in.
No, but there has to, yeah. Anyways, okay. Whoop, filed away.
So
keep going.
His title is buyer, but he's way overqualified. That was another pattern from the day. It was like everyone was way overqualified for what they were doing with this company. They were just very smart for their title, at least.
Got it. Okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
His assistant is a lawyer, like a proper lawyer. She went to law school, sharp as a tack, very direct, professional, wasn't just a yes woman. Her office was right next to his, and they were just talking all day in person. Okay. So that was interesting. She wasn't just like an administrative assistant.
They're talking all day like she's in the same room or they're in separate rooms?
No, she's next door, but she's in and out of the office all day long.
Cool.
Okay. This gentleman solicited advice from everyone around him. Okay. Not only like the smart people or the C-level people, his buyer, his assistant, me, anyone. He wanted truth or advice anywhere he could get it, but he was not afraid to tell them that's a bad idea. I don't like that idea. Or that's a brilliant idea. Not in a rude way, just in a very direct way. What are your thoughts on that?
I love it. I think it makes a ton of sense. I think it makes a ton of sense, especially for people who have gotten to that level. There's an interview I saw with a guy who was an executive at Facebook. He said the same thing about Mark Zuckerberg. He's like, going into a meeting with Mark, he wants the feedback. He will take any feedback from anybody. He will tell you if he thinks your idea sucks. He'll push back on you, but he's open to having his mind changed. And I think that the most successful people, especially in that stratosphere, everybody's trying to dethrone them. They have to be open to feedback because otherwise they're going to get taken out. So it doesn't surprise me because I've heard about it, but it also does surprise me because you don't think of like billionaire know-it-alls as like asking questions of the janitor. I think it's awesome.
Like when I first walked in, I got there 5 minutes early, 7:55. Every single person in the office was already there and working at 7:55, which that alone was interesting to me. I walked in and this gentleman was standing right inside the door with another gentleman, and they were looking at new packaging options. I walk in the door and they're like, Chris, oh, thanks for coming. Nice to meet you. Hey, look at this packaging with us. What do you think? Do you like this one or this one? Does the lid fit right? How does it look? If you were a customer, what would you think if you picked this up and like, this was like how I met them. I'd never met them in person ever. And they immediately, and I don't know about packaging. I've never had a consumer packaged good before. I'm not like a packaging expert, but he genuinely wanted my feedback. I'm like, So it set us off on the right foot.
So he was instantly engaging, instantly charismatic.
Instantly. Yeah, but there were no pleasantries. He was nice, shook my hand. Nice to meet you. I'm so-and-so. Here's so-and-so. What do you think of this packaging? Like, we just get right into it.
Was it like intimidating or was it like, oh, this is my friend's dad from college and we're meeting for the first time?
It was extremely welcoming.
That's awesome.
Like it just puts you at home immediately. Okay.
Okay.
So then we're in this office and immediately we just start riffing on ideas. And it was very much like ADD laced. Just there was a whiteboard. We were whiteboarding. He was whiteboarding, but he wanted advice from everyone. And we were just all over the place. And I'd ask a question like, well, what do you pay for this? Look it up. And he'd ask the other guy to look it up. They'd look it up. And then we'd spend an hour talking about that one question. And I'm like, I thought we were talking about this. Like, this is me. Are you me? Like, we're ADD all over the place.
Yeah.
You know? That was a big takeaway for me, was like, he just wanted advice from everyone. And he would respectfully tell you, that doesn't work because X, Y, or Z. I don't like that idea, but not in an offensive way. That was the culture of everyone there, was just very direct, but professional.
I think I'm very good at the former and not great at the latter. I love getting advice. I love questioning. I love like finding the right answer. But when it comes time to like, you make the decision or you give direct feedback, I don't know if I'm as good. I mean, I'm trying to be better, but I wonder, like, those two things are, I think, rare skills to have at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. Another thing is they would come up with an idea, an action item. Let's do this. He would do it immediately. He would stand up from his desk, have his assistant sit down and type the email for him. He would just watch her type, and they're like, and he wasn't really reading. She would just like type it out, and then she'd like edit it. And then she's like, yeah, you good? Good. She'd send, they'd swap places. He'd sit back down.
No way. Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you ever seen like Trump with his assistants? They'll tweet for him. It's pretty funny. So like, she'll be sitting here like this, like, or like typing out, and then she'll like turn the phone and show him. And it's, you know, in the grandpa text, it's like this big, all caps, because that's just like the way he tweets. And then he'll be like, yeah, that's good. Change this part. And then like, she sends it off. As Twitter would say, there's a lesson there. No, that's interesting. She writes it for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to recap really quickly. Gregarious, very welcoming,
very likable,
curious, but like genuinely curious, soliciting feedback, action oriented, direct with his feedback, firm decisions, next steps done right away. Like nothing's hanging over. Yeah, let's circle back on that, or let's drill down on that later. Like, no, it's like, okay, cool, we're done. Do it. Like moves it off of his plate quick.
The way he handled phone calls was super interesting. And remember my boss, Danny, the pest control business
Danny
owner?
Galini?
Yes, Danny Galini. He would always answer the phone with, go ahead. Go, like, just let's freaking get into it. And then at the end, he would end it with, let me go. Let me go. Right? Like, I'm done with this conversation.
All right, now's the part of the show where I feel the most uncomfortable, but my therapist says I need to face my fears. So here we are. I've started a newsletter and I want you to subscribe. And what you're going to get every single week are the aggregated conversations from that week that I have on this podcast with an overview of what their business actually looks like. I'm also going to throw in a review of 1 or 2 businesses that are listed for sale. I'll give you my opinion on whether or not the EBITDA multiple is good, or there's customer concentration, or there's red flags or green flags. And then lastly, I'm going to give you one piece of actionable advice every single week on how to buy your first business. So click the link below, subscribe to my newsletter, and let's get back into the show.
I swear on my life, this guy, he answered the phone. Go ahead. Right? As if it was like a walkie-talkie.
Yeah.
And just straight to the point. And like people would like over describe things to him. And he would just interrupt him. Like, tell me exactly what I need to know. What do I need to know? Okay. So that was interesting. His always on speakerphone, maybe because he can hear better, maybe because he wanted the people in the room to hear it. Right.
Dude. Yes. And he's like created this environment where no secrets. It was like, dude, like secrets cost him money. All right, cool. Everyone's going to hear. Great. What did you guys think of that? Let's make a decision straight to the point. I love that. I love that.
It's funny you say no secrets, because at one point he said to me, Chris, what if I paid you X amount of dollars a year to work here? It's like completely took me off guard.
200,000 a year? 300,000 a year? 700,000 a year? Stop
it
me,
was
Chris.
sure.
Chris, $900,000, $1 million a year, Chris?
It was surely an amount of money much more than either of the people in the room make. And how easily do I get awkward, Nick?
Exceptionally easily.
I get awkward probably more than anyone you've ever met in your life, right? I wanted to die. I wanted to jump out of the window. Because I'm like, what? We're talking salary net? We're negotiating salary in front of these, what?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I probably couldn't pay you that much, because then everyone would get jealous and they would resent you. And I'm thinking like, why does anyone have to know? Why can't we just?
He's like the autistic guy. He's just like, because you get it, right? Because then your wife would be attracted to me if you came in the office. You're like, whoa, what? I don't.
Well, and then he would look to the other people like, what do you think? What do you think? Yeah. They were just like, I'm like, are we talking about this openly? What is happening?
Pretty cool.
Here?
Yeah.
And then I literally said out loud, I'm like, oh, this is awkward. And he's like, what is it, Chris? Is it a heck yes or a heck no? Is it a heck yes or a heck no? And I'm like, would I have to move here? And he's like, oh, he's actually considering it?
That was a joke. Okay.
You think we would ever pay you that? So very, very open.
Let me ask you this. I've noticed myself doing this in the last year in particular. I find myself cutting people off. I'm not trying to be rude, but it's like, I see where you're going with this. Okay, cool. Like, I don't need
let me save us both some
else.
time.
Yeah, like let's just cut to it. And I still struggle with it because I don't want people to think that I'm rude or mean or douche. You know what I mean? But at the same time, it's like, okay, cool. Can we hurry this along? Did you see yourself in him when he would do that?
100%.
Yeah, it's weird,
100%.
right? I wouldn't have thought this. Like even 2 years ago, I wouldn't have thought this. But like recently, I could definitely see that.
Yeah. I wonder if when either he's always been that way, or if when he was our age, he would kind of pussyfoot around it and hesitate. And now that he's older, he's just like, I don't give a crap. Like, we're going to save time here. I'm going to cut you off. I know where you're going.
He's probably like, look, either you're going to like me or you're not going to like me. I can't waste my time on it. But he's going to be super, welcoming, engaging, gregarious. So, like quickly you trust him. Like he doesn't mean it to be rude. That's the way I'm starting to feel about it. It's like, look, you're going to get to know me. You know that I'm not trying to be rude. I like you. Right. But let's just get to the heart of the matter.
I think Michael Girdley has this like a one pager that he gives people that work with him. And it just gets like all of that out of the way. And I really like that. Because then it's like, then they know on day one that you're not being rude. That's just how you are. And I like that idea. He kept referring to 175 years the whole time. And I would be like, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Why don't you could definitely raise these prices. And he's like, Chris, I want this business to be around in 175 years. Right. So your idea is great for the next 5 years, but I'm not worried about that. He starts referencing all these companies he's like, Sears was amazing. Sears was amazing. They should have been around for 175 years, but they made this one mistake. And so they're not. He's like, they could have done this, and I guarantee you they'd still be around, but they didn't.
Did he give his rationale for why 175? That's like a very specific number.
Maybe he wants to get to 2,200, and we're like, I don't know.
Interesting.
But just that's the framework, is just a long-term thinker.
Generational.
Very long-term thinker. Yeah.
A lot of the Warren Buffett is like that. Elon Musk is like if you look at these guys who have billions of dollars, they're looking at long time horizons. I mean, Musk's trying to go to Mars. Warren Buffett is 92 and he's still investing as if he's got a 40-year time horizon. So they're not necessarily trying to make decisions for this next quarter. They're trying to make decisions for the long term. And I do think it changes at some point. When you're getting started, it's like, oh no, I got to make the decision for tomorrow. Like I got to figure this out now. And then you get to a certain level that I think you're financially able to make decisions that are long-term as opposed to like just these short-term flips.
Yeah. Say yes to everything until you can afford to say no to everything.
Right.
He kept wanting to know how I think, because I think like everything he knew about me was publicly facing, but he kept asking me these questions that were kind of tests. They were tests in a way. Like at one point he had me stand up to the whiteboard and he asked me this super complicated question about his ranch and his deer lease, and like how he tags these deer, and how he asked the guys that work on his ranch, if we kill all the deer with the red tags, how many deer would be left over? And it was kind of like, it was a math question on its surface, but really it was a how do you think question below the surface. It was really interesting. And sometimes I would answer in a smart way, but the wrong way. Like he was talking about like an issue they were having with a vendor. And he's like, now, why do you think we can't ask our vendor to price us according to this other customer of theirs? And I was like, well, because then they would eventually find out it would piss that customer off, and it would risk what the vendor has with their customer. And he's like, that's actually genius. And that's crazy you thought of that, but that's not at all what I'm getting at. I'm like, oh, thank you.
Did you say genius?
Like, there were like 3 or 4 times when he asked me these questions to test, not if I knew the answer, but what follow-up questions would I ask to help get to the right answer? And he didn't even care if I got to the right answer or not. Anyway, so in general, it was an amazing experience, really enlightening day. And I learned a ton.
I like that idea of like seeing how people think. So you and I'll tell you offline, but you and I have a mutual friend who has a friend that he claims is worth like $800 million. And for a myriad of reasons, I don't believe him. The reasons don't matter why I don't believe him, but they were there. And like we were talking about it. And there's 2 ways that you can sort of validate somebody, I think, over time. Way number 1 is the hard facts. Oh, they fly private. I met their chief of staff of this company. His personal chef was here. He let me stay at several of his houses, right? Like those are facts that you can do. The other way that I think you can validate is just by talking to them, many conversations over an extended period of time. And you just get a feel for how they think, what kind of decisions they would make. And that can get you to trust and validate those things, right? It's like, oh yeah, he's a freaking genius when it comes to business. He's coached me on a couple of whatever. And that's where I think this billionaire that was talking to you, it's that second thing, right? It's like, how do you think? How do you answer this question? He's validating you by quickly trying to get to the spot that most people spend months getting to because they're just like getting to know somebody. He's trying to elicit that quickly by asking these series of questions. I think that's a really interesting way to sort of think about validating somebody, is how do you quickly get them to give you the information you need?
Yeah, I agree.
Isn't it funny? Like even 3 years ago, the conversations that you and I are having are the same. And I would say like the quality of our intellect and curiosity is pretty much the same. But now like the people that we're talking to and the opportunities that we've had is like, it's so different. Like, and the ability to effectuate change by using our skills and like things that we're better than anybody else in the world at is pretty incredible. Anyways, that was like my thought after listening to you.
No, that's good. And a framework that I just thought of while you were saying that is like, one thing that we're doing with this podcast, either overtly or subtly, is encouraging people to go out and do cool stuff, right? Just start something, do something, build something, sell something, do something epic and cool. If you do that, it's almost silly. It's almost stupid, I would say, to not tell the internet what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? Like, I get it. I on one hand, I get it. Like content is a beast. It can be stressful. It could be addicting in a very bad way, but it just opens up. Like if you're opportunistic, which you probably are if you're listening to this, then you can be even more opportunistic by simply telling people about what you're doing. If you're doing something cool. Like this guy invited me over because of an interview he saw of mine that wasn't even on my podcast. He hadn't even seen any of my content. It was someone else's content.
Oh, that's crazy.
One piece of content.
Super random.
Right? Like,
well, and it's not all, the other thing is like, it's not all going to look the same. You and I are going to look very differently. You are much better than I am at storytelling, at figuring out the hook, at figuring out the interesting angle, at being brief, right? Like I talk too much. So your ability to grow an audience is much better than, I'm not saying that I won't get better. I'm not saying I won't grow an audience, whatever. You're just like, you've built this skill set up over time and you have this natural ability. You're better than me at this. So your opportunity with content is different, right?
Mhm.
I'm kind of you're doing really cool stuff now. And now like, it's just continue to feed into your stuff. My path may be a little different. I'm thinking now about doing cool things, maybe raising some money, maybe getting back into healthcare, still continuing to do content, but like using those things that I'm doing as a way to feed the content. And then that is an opportunity for me to continue to share, right? Like, but those are two very different things, the paths that we're laying out there. And neither one of them is right or wrong for anybody. They're just right or wrong for specific people. And that's what's so cool to me is you can use this in any way that you want. You just need to figure out how you build trust at scale and then how it works for you moving forward.
You got to figure out what you do.
You got to figure out what you do. All right.
All right.
Hey,
It's good.
love you too.